My father, the Passion Emperor, was 72, yet looked no more than 35. The year he encompassed the death of Duke Leto and gave Arrakis back to the Harkonnens. He seldom appeared in public wearing other than a Sardaukar uniform and a Berserk black helmet with the Imperial Lion in gold upon its crest. The uniform was an open reminder of where his power lay. He was not always that blatant, though. When he wanted, he could radiate charm and sincerity, but I often wonder, in these later days, if anything about him was as it seemed. I think now he was a man fighting constantly to escape the bars of an invisible cage. You must remember that he was an emperor, fatherhead of a dynasty that reached back into the dimmest memory, into the dimmest history. But we denied him a legal son. Was this not the most terrible defeat a ruler ever suffered? My mother obeyed her sister's superiors, where the Lady Jessica disobeyed. Which of them was the stronger? History already has answered. From In My Father's House by the Princess Irulan. Jessica awakened in cave darkness, sensing the stir of Fremen around her, smelling the acrid stillsuit odor. Her inner time sense told her it would soon be night outside, but the cave remained in blackness, shielded from the desert by the plastic hoods that trapped their eye moisture within this place. She realized that she had permitted herself the utterly relaxing sleep of great fatigue, and this suggested something of her own unconscious assessment on personal security within Stilgar's troop. She turned in the hammock that had been fashioned of her robe, slipped her feet to the rock floor, and into her desert boots. I must remember to fasten the boots slip fashion to help my stillsuit's pumping action, she thought. There are so many things to remember. She could still taste their morning meal, the morsel of bird flesh and grain with a leaf with spice honey. And it came to her that the use of time was turned around here. Night was the day of activity, and day was the time of rest. Night conceals, night is safest. She unhooked her robe from its hammock pegs in a rock alcove, fumbled with the fabric in the dark until she found the top, slipped into it. How to get a message out to the Bene Gesserit, she wondered. They would have to be told of the two strays in Arrakene's sanctuary. Glow globes came alight farther into the cave. She saw people moving there, Paul among them, already dressed, with his hood thrown back to reveal the eloquent Atreides profile. He had acted so strangely before they retired, she thought. Withdrawn. He was like one come back from the dead, not yet fully aware of his return. His eyes half shut and glassy with the inward stare. It made her think of his warning about the spice-impregnated diet. Addictive. Are there side effects, she wondered? He said it had something to do with his prescient faculty. But he's been strangely silent about what he sees. Stilgar came from the shadows to her right, crossed to the group beneath the glow globes. She marked how he fingered his beard and the watchful cat-stalking look of him. Abrupt fear shot through Jessica as her senses awakened to the tensions visible in the people gathered around Paul, the stiff movements, the ritual positions. They have my countenance, Stilgar rumbled. Jessica recognized the man Stilgar confronted, Jamis. She saw then the rage in Jamis, the tight set of his shoulders. Jamis the man Paul bested. She thought, "You know the rules, Stilgar." Jamis said, "Who knows it better?" Stilgar asked, and she heard the tone of placation in his voice, the attempt to smooth something over. "I choose the combat," Jamis growled. Jessica sped across the cave, grasped Stilgar's arm. "What is this?" she asked. "It is the Amtal rule," Stilgar said. "Jamis is demanding the right to test your part in the legend. She must be championed," Jamis said. "If her champion wins, that's the truth in it. But it said," he glanced across the press of people, "that she'd need no champion from the Fremen, which can mean only that she brings her own champion." He is talking of single combat with Paul, Jessica thought. She released Stilgar's arm, took a half step forward. "I'm always my own champion," she said. "The meaning's simple enough for..." "You'll not tell us our ways," Jamis snapped. "Not without more proof than I've seen. Stilgar could have told you what to say that last morning. He could have filled your mind full of the coddle, and you could have bird talked it to us, hoping to make a false way among us." I can take him, Jessica thought, but that might conflict with the way they interpret the legend. And again she wondered at the way the Missionaria Protectiva's work had been twisted on this planet. Stilgar looked at Jessica, spoke in a low voice, but one designed to carry to the crowd's fringe. "Jamis is one to hold a grudge, Saidina. Your son bested him, and it was an accident," Jamis roared. "There was witch force at the basin, and then I'll prove it now." "And I have bested him myself," Stilgar continued. "He seeks by this tie challenge to get back at me as well. There's too much violence in Jamis for him to ever make a good leader. Too much Gafla. The distraction. He gives his mouth to the rules and his heart to the Sarfa. The turning way. No, he could never make a good leader. I preserved him this long because he's useful in a fight as such. But when he gets this carving anger on him, he's dangerous to his own society. Stilgar! Jamis rumbled. And Jessica saw what Stilgar was doing, trying to enrage Jamis to take the challenge away from Paul. Stilgar faced Jamis. And again, Jessica heard the soothing in the rumbling voice. Jamis, he's but a boy. You named him a man. Jamis said. His mother says he's been through the Gam Jabbar. He's full-fleshed and with a surfeit of water. The one who carried their pack set as there's liturgons of water in it. Liturgons. And us sipping our cash pockets the instant they do sparkle. Stilgar glanced at Jessica. Is this true? Is there water in your pack? Yes. Liturgons of it? 2 liturgons. What was intended with this wealth? Wealth? She thought. She shook her head, feeling the coldness in his voice. Where I was born, water fell from the sky and ran over the land in wide rivers, she said. There were oceans of it so broad you could not see either the shore. I've not been trained to your water discipline. I never before had to think of it this way. A sighing gasp arose from the people around them. Water fell from the sky. It ran over the land. Did you know there are those among us who've lost from their catch pockets by accident and will be in sore trouble before we reach Tabr this night? How could I know? Jessica shook her head. If they're in need, give them water from our pack. Is this what you intended with this wealth? I intended it to save life, she said. Then we accept your blessing, Sayadina. You'll not buy us off with water, John growled. Or will you anger me against your Stilgar. I see you trying to make me call you out before I've proved my words. Stilgar faced Jamis. Are you determined to press this fight against a child, Jamis? His voice was low, venomous. She must be championed. Even though she has my countenance, I invoke the Amtal rule. Jamis said. It's my right. Stilgar nodded. Then if the boy does not carve you down, you'll answer to my knife afterward. And this time I'll not hold back the blade as I've done before. You can't do this thing, Jessica said. Paul's just... You must not interfere, Sayadina. Stilgar said. Oh, I know you can take me, and therefore I can take anyone among us. But you cannot best us all united. This must be. It is the Amtal rule. Jessica fell silent, staring at him in the green light of the glow globes. Seeing the demoniacal stiffness that had taken over his expression, she shifted her attention to Jamis, saw the brooding look to his brows, and thought, I should have seen that before. He broods. He's the silent kind, one who works himself up inside. I should have been prepared. If you harm my son, she said, you'll have me to meet. I call you out now. I'll carve you into a joint of Mother! Paul stepped forward, touched her sleeve. Perhaps if I explained to Jamis how... Explain? Jamis sneered. Paul fell silent, staring at the man. He felt no fear of him. Jamis appeared clumsy in his movements, and he had fallen so easily in their night encounter on the sand, but Paul still felt the nexus boiling of this cave, still remembered the prescient visions of himself dead under a knife. There had been so few avenues of escape for him. In that vision, Stilgar said, Sayadina, you must step back now. Stop calling her Sayadina, Jamis said. That's yet to be proved. So she knows the prayer. What's that? Every child of Monarchs knows it. He has talked enough, Jessica thought. I have the key to him. I could immobilize him with a word. She hesitated. But I cannot stop them all. You'll answer to me then, Jessica said. And she pitched her voice in a twisting tone, with a little whine in it to catch at the end. Jamis stared at her, fright visible on his face. I'll teach you agony, she said in the same tone. Remember that as you fight. You'll have agony such as will make the Gamjabar happy memory by comparison. You'll arrive with your entire... She tries to use a spell on me. Jamis gasped. He put his clenched fist and right fist behind his ear. I invoked the silence on her. So be it then, Stilgar said. He cast a warning glance at Jessica. If you speak again, Sayadina, we'll know it's your witchcraft and you'll be forfeit. He nodded for her to step back. Jessica felt hands pulling her, helping her back, and she sensed they were not unkindly. She saw Paul being separated from the throng, the elfin-faced Chani whispering in his ear as she nodded toward Jamis. A ring formed within the troop. More gloves were brought, and all of them tuned to the yellow band. Jamis stepped into the ring, slipped out of his robe, and tossed it to someone in the crowd. He stood there in a cloudy gray slickness of stillsuit that was patched and marked by tucks and gathers. For a moment, he bent with his mouth to his shoulder, drinking from a catch pocket tube. Presently, he straightened, peeled off, and detached the suit, handed it carefully into the crowd. He stood waiting, clad in loincloth and some tight fabric over his feet, a crysknife in his right hand. Jessica saw the girl-child Chani helping Paul, saw her press a crysknife handle into his palm, saw him lift it and heft it, testing the weight and balance, and it came to Jessica that Paul had been trained in Prana and Bindu, the nerve and the fiber, that he had been taught fighting in a deadly school. His teachers, men like Duncan Idaho and Gary Halleck, men who were legends in their own lifetimes. The boy knew the devious ways of the Bene Gesserit, and he looked supple and confident. But he's only 15, she thought, and he has no shield. I must stop this. Somehow, there must be a way to... She looked up, saw Stilgar watching her. You cannot stop it, she said. And he said, you must not speak. She put her hand over her mouth, thinking, I've planted fear in Jamis' mind. It'll slow him some, perhaps. If I could only pray, truly pray. Paul's still alone now, just into the ring, clad in the fighting trunks he'd worn under his still suit. He held a crysknife in his right hand. His feet were bare against the sand-graded rock. Idaho had warned him in time and again, when in doubt of your surface, bare feet are best. And there were Chinese words of instruction still in front of his consciousness. Thomas turns to the right with his knife after a parry. It's a habit in him we've all seen, and he'll aim for the eyes to catch a blink in which to slash you, and he can fight either hand. Look out for a knife shift. But strongest in Paul, so that he felt it with his entire body, was training and the instinctual reaction mechanisms that had been hammered into him day after day, hour after hour on the practice floor. Granny Halleck's words were there to remember. The good knife fighter thinks on point, and blade and shearing guard simultaneously. The point can also cut. The blade can also stab. The shearing guard can also trap your opponent's blade. Paul glanced at the crysknife. There was no shearing guard. Only the slim, round ring of the handle with its raised lips to protect the hand. And even so, he realized that he did not know the breaking tension of this blade. Did not even know if it could be broken. Thomas began sliding to the right along the edge of the ring opposite Paul. Paul crouched, realizing then they had no shield, but was trained to fighting with its subtle field around him, trained to react on defense with utmost speed, while his attack would be timed to the controlled slowness necessary for penetrating the enemy shield. In spite of constant warning from his trainers not to depend on the shield's mindless blunting of attack speed, he knew that shield awareness was part of him. Thomas called out in ritual challenge, "May thy knife chip and shatter." The knife will break then, Paul thought. He cautioned himself that Thomas was also without shield, but the man wasn't trained to its use, had no shield fire inhibitions. Paul stared across the ring at Thomas. The man's body looked like a knotted whipcord on a dried skeleton. His crysknife alone, his crysknife shone milky yellow in the light of the glow globes. Fear coursed through Paul. He felt suddenly alone and naked, standing in dull yellow light within this ring of people. Prescience had fed his knowledge with countless experiences, hinted at the strongest currents of the future and the strings of decision that guided them. But this was the real now. This was death hanging on an infinite number of minuscule mischances. Anything could tip the future here, he realized. Someone coughing in the troop of watchers, a distraction, a variation in the glow globe's brilliance, a deceptive shadow. I'm afraid, Paul told himself. And he circled warily opposite Jamis, repeating soundly to himself the Bene Gesserit litany against fear. Fear is the mind killer. It was a cold bath washing over him. He felt muscles untie themselves, become poised and ready. I'll sheath my knife in your blood, John snarled. And in the middle of the last word, he pounced. Jessica saw the motion, stifled an outcry. Where the man struck, there was only empty air, and Paul stood now behind Jamis, with a clear shot of it at the exposed back. Now, Paul, now! Jessica screamed in her mind. Paul's motion was slowly timed, beautifully fluid, but so slow it gave Jamis the margin to twist away, backing and turning to the right. Paul withdrew, crouching low. First, you must find my blood, he said. Jessica recognized the shield fire timing in her son. It came over her what a two-edged thing that was. The boy's reactions were those of youth and trained to a peak these people had never seen, but the attack was trained too. And conditioned by the necessities of penetrating a shield barrier. A shield would repel too fast to blow, admit only the slowly deceptive counter. It needed control and trickery to get through a shield. Does Paul see it? She asked herself. He must. Again, Jamis attacked, ink-dark eyes glaring, his body yellow blur under the glow globes. And again, Paul slipped away to return too slowly on the attack. And again, and again. Each time, Paul's counterblow came an instant late. And Jessica saw a thing she hoped Jamis did not see. Paul's defensive reactions were blindingly fast, but they moved each time at the precisely correct angle they would take if a shield were helping deflect part of Jamis' blow. Is your son playing that or fool? Stoker asked. He waved her silence before she could respond. Sorry, you must remain silent. Now the two figures on the rock floor circled each other, Jamis with knife hand held far forward and tipped up slightly, Paul crouched with knife held low. Again, Jamis bounced, and this time he twisted to the right, where Paul had been dodging. Instead of faking back and out, Paul met the man's knife hand on the point of his own blade. Then the boy was gone, twisting away to the left, and thankful for Chinese warning. Jamis backed into the center of the circle, rubbing his knife hand. Blood dripped from the injury for a moment, stopped. His eyes were wide and staring, two blue black holes, studying Paul with a new wariness in the dull light of the glow globes. Ah, that one hurt, Stoker murmured. Paul crouched at the ray, as he had been trained to do after first blood, called out, Do you yield? Ha! Jamis cried. An angry murmur arose from the troop. Hold! Stoker called out. The lad doesn't know our rule. Then to Paul, there can be no yielding in this high challenge. Death is the test of it. Jessica saw Paul swallow hard, and she thought, he's never killed a man like this. In the hot blood of a knife fight, can he do it? Paul circled slowly right, forced by Jamis' movement. The prescient knowledge of the time-boiling variables in this cave came back to plague him now. His new understanding told him there were only too many swiftly compressed decisions in this fight for any clear channel ahead to show itself. Variable piled upon variable. That was the way this cave lay, as a blurred nexus in his path. It was like a gigantic rock in the flood, creating maelstroms in the current around it. "Have an end to it, lad," Stilgar muttered. "Don't play with him." Paul crept further into the ring, relying on his own edge and speed. John was back now. The realization swept over him that this was no soft off-worlder in the Tahai ring. Easy prey for a Fremen grist knife. Jessica saw the shadow of desperation in the man's face. Now is when he's most dangerous, she thought. Now he's desperate and can do anything. He sees that this is not like a child of his own people, but a fighting machine born and trained to it from infancy. Now the fear planted in him has come to bloom. And she found herself in a sense of pay for Jamis, an emotion tempered by awareness of the immediate peril to her son. Jamis could do anything, any predictable thing, she told herself. She wondered then if Paul glimpsed this future, if he were reliving this experience. But she saw the way her son moved, the beads of perspiration on his face and shoulders, the careful wariness visible in the flow of muscles. And for the first time she sensed, without understanding it, the uncertainty factor in Paul's gift. Paul pressed the fight now, circling but not attacking. He had seen the fear in his opponent. Memory of Duncan Idaho's voice flowed through Paul's awareness. When your opponent fears you, then's the moment when you give the fear its own reign. Give it time to work on him. Let it become terror. The terrified man fights himself. Eventually he attacks in desperation. That is the most dangerous moment. But the terrified man can be trusted, usually, to make a fatal mistake. You are being trained here to detect these mistakes and use them. The crowd in the cavern began to mutter. They think Paul's toying with Jamis, Jessica thought. They think Paul's being needlessly cruel. But she sensed also the undercurrent of crowd excitement, their enjoyment of the spectacle. And she could see the pressure building up in Jamis. The moment when it became too much for him to contain was as apparent to her as it was to Jamis, or to Paul. Jamis leaped high, feinting and striking down with his right hand. But the hand was empty. The grist knife had been shifted to his left hand. Jessica gasped. But Paul had been warned by Chani. Jamis fights with either hand. And the depth of his training had taken in that trick in passant. Keep the mind on the knife and not on the hand that holds it. Gurney Hogg had told him time and again. The knife is more dangerous than the hand, and the knife can be in either hand. And Paul had seen Jonas's mistake. Bad footwork, so it took the man a heartbeat longer to recover from his leap, which had been intended to confuse Paul and hide the knife shift. Except for the low yellow light of the glow globes and the inky eyes of the staring troop, it was similar to a session on the practice floor. Shields didn't count where the body's own movement could be used against it. Paul shifted his own knife in a blurred motion, slipped sideways, and thrust upward where Jonas's chest was descending, then away to watch the man crumble. Jonas fell like a limp rag, face down, gasped once, and turned his face toward Paul, then lay still on the rock floor. His dead eyes stared out like beads of dark glass. Killing with the point lacks artistry, or Idaho once told Paul. But don't let that hold your hand when the opening presents itself. The troop rushed forward, filling the ring, pushing Paul aside. They hid Jonas in a frenzy of howling activity. Presently, a group of them hurried them back into the depths of the cavern, carrying a burden wrapped in a robe. And there was no body on the rock floor. Jessica pressed through toward her son. She felt that she swam in a sea of robe and stinking backs, a throng strangely silent. Now is the terrible moment, she thought. He has killed a man in clear superiority of mind and muscle. He must not grow to enjoy such a victory. She forced herself through the last of the troop and into a small open space where two bearded Fremen were helping Paul into his still suit. Jessica stared at her son. Paul's eyes were bright. He breathed heavily, permitting the ministrations to his body rather than helping them. Him against Johnson, not a mark on him, one of the men murmured. Shani stood at one side, her eyes focused on Paul. Jessica saw the girl's excitement, the admiration in the elfin face. It must be done now and swiftly, Jessica thought. She compassed ultimate scorn into her voice and manner, said, "Well now, how does it feel to be a killer?" Paul stiffened as though he'd been struck. He met his mother's cold glare, and his face darkened with a rush of blood. Involuntarily, he glanced toward the place on the cavern floor where Jonas had lain. Stilgar pressed through to Jessica's side, returning from the cave depths where the body of Jonas had been taken. He spoke to Paul in a better controlled tone. "When the time comes for you to call me out and try for my Berta, do not think you will play with me the way you played with Jonas." Jessica sensed the way her own words and Stilgar's sank into Paul, doing their harsh work on the boy. The mistake these people made. It served a purpose now. She searched the faces around them as Paul was doing, seeing what he saw. Admiration, yes, and fear, and some loathing. She looked at Stilgar, saw his fatalism, knew how the fight had seemed to him. Paul looked at his mother. "You know what it is," he said. She heard the return to sanity. There was remorse in his voice. Jessica swept her glance across the troop, said, Paul has never before killed a man with a naked blade. Stilgar faced her, disbelief in his face. I wasn't playing with him, Paul said. He pressed in front of his mother, straightened his robe, glanced at the dark place of Jonas's blood on the carved floor. I did not want to kill him. Jessica saw the belief come slowly to Stilgar, saw the relief in him as he tugged at his beard with a deeply veined hand. She heard muttering awareness spread through the troop. That's why you asked him to yield, Stilgar said. I see. Our ways are different, but you'll see the sense in them. I thought we admitted a scorpion into our midst. He hesitated, then, and I shall not call you the more. A voice from the troop called out, Needs a naming still. Stilgar nodded, tugging at his beard. I see strength in you, like the strength beneath a pillar. Again he paused, then. You shall be known among us as Usul, the base of the pillar. It is your secret name, your troop name. We of Seitch Tabr may use it, but none other may so presume. Usul. Murmuring went through the troop. Good choice, that. Strong. Brings luck. And Jessica sensed the acceptance, knowing she was included in it with her champion. She was indeed Sayadina. Now, what name of manhood do you choose for us to call you openly? Stilgar asked. Paul glanced at his mother, back to Stilgar. Bits and pieces of this moment registered on his prescient memory, but he felt the differences as though they were physical, a pressure forcing him through the narrow door of the present. How do you call among you the little mouse? The mouse that jumps? Paul asked, remembering the pop-hop of motion at Tuna Basin. He illustrated with one hand. A chuckle sounded through the troop. We call that one Muad'Dib, Stilgar said. Jessica gasped. It was the name Paul had told her, carrying that Fremen, saying that the Fremen would accept him and call him thus. She felt a sudden fear of her son and for him. Paul swallowed. He felt that he played the part already played over countless times in his mind, yet there were differences. He could see himself perched on a dizzying summit, having experienced much, and possessed of a profound store of knowledge. But all around him was abyss. And again he remembered the vision of fanatic legions following the green and black banner of the Atreides, pillaging and burning across the universe in the name of their prophet Muad'Dib. That must not happen, he told himself. Is that the name you wish, Muad'Dib? Stilgar asked. I'm an Atreides, Paul whispered. Then Lar, it's not right that I give up entirely the name my father gave me. Could I be known among you as Paul Muad'Dib? You are Paul Muad'Dib, Storer said. And Paul thought, that was in no vision of mine. I did a different thing. But he felt that the abyss remained all around him. Again, a murmuring response went through the troop as man turned to man. Wisdom with strength. Couldn't ask more. It's the legend for sure. Lisan al-Gaib. Lisan al-Gaib. I will tell you a thing about your new name, Storer said. Your choice pleases us. Muad'Dib is wise in the ways of the desert. Muad'Dib creates his own water. Muad'Dib hides from the sun and travels in the cool night. Muad'Dib is fruitful and multiplies over the land. Muad'Dib we call an instructor of boys. That is a powerful base on which to build your life, Paul Muad'Dib, who is Usul among us. We welcome you. Stilgar touched Paul's forehead with one palm, withdrew his hand, embraced Paul, and murmured, Usul. As Stilgar released him, another member of the troop embraced Paul, repeating his new troop name. And Paul almost passed from embrace to embrace through the troop, hearing the voices and shadings of tone. Usul, Usul, Usul. Already, he had placed some of them by name. And there was Chai, who pressed her cheek against his and held him and said his name. Presently, Paul stood again before Stilgar, who said, Now you are of the Ishwan Bedouin, our brother. His face hardened, and he spoke with command in his voice. And now, Paul Deeb, tighten up that still suit. He glanced at Chai. Chai, Paul Muad'Dib's nose plugs are as poor a fit as I've seen. I thought I ordered you to see after him. I hadn't the making still, she said. There's Johnson's, of course, but enough of that. Then I'll share one of mine, she said. I can make do with one until... You will not, Storer said. I know there are spares among us. Where are the spares? Are we a troop together or a band of savages? Hands reached out from the troop offering iron fibrous objects. Stilgar selected 4, handed them to Chai. Fit these to Usul and the Sayadina. A voice lifted from the back of the troop. While the Leodrons in their pack. I know your need, Farak, Stoller said. He glanced at Jessica. She nodded. Broach one for those that need it, Stoller said. Wiremaster. Where is the Wiremaster? Ah, Shimum. Care for the measuring of what is needed. The necessity and no more. This wire is the dower property of the Sayadina and will be repaid in the Seitch at field rates less back fees. What is the repayment at field rates? Jessica asked. 10 for 1, Storer said. But It is a wise rule, as you come to see, Stoker said. A rustling of robes marked movement at the back of the troop as men turned to get the water. Stoker held up a hand, and there was silence. Pastor Jamis, he said, I ordered the full ceremony. Jamis was our companion and brother of the Ishwan Bedouin. There shall be no turning away without the respect due one who proved our fortune by his Tahai challenge. I invoke the right at sunset when the dark shall cover him. Paul, hearing these words, realized that he had plunged once more into the abyss. Blind time. There was no past occupying the future in his mind, except he could still sense the green and black Atreides banner waving somewhere ahead. Still see the jihad's bloody swords and fanatic legions. It will not be, he told himself. It cannot be. I cannot let it be.